There's a moment in life that many people reach where everything starts to feel like work. Not productive effort, not meaningful challenges, but just constant pushing. You push yourself to stay motivated. You push yourself to stay disciplined. You push yourself to keep going. And yet somehow things still feel heavy. Life starts to feel like something that you're forcing. Like every step forward requires a huge amount of effort just to keep moving. And when people reach that point, the usual advice comes up. Try harder, stay disciplined, be more motivated, push through the resistance. But what if getting to that point is actually the signal? What if the constant effort that you feel is not a sign that you need to push harder, but a sign that something in your life is out of alignment? Because here's something that most people never consider. Force is rarely the solution. Force is usually the symptom. When something is aligned, it tends to move. Not necessarily easily, but just naturally. So think about the difference between swimming with the current versus swimming directly against it. Both require effort, but one moves you forward with the current, and the other exhausts you just to stay in place. Many people are trying to build their lives by swimming against their own current. They're forcing careers that don't match who they're becoming. They're forcing habits that conflict with how they actually see themselves. They're forcing goals that were inherited from culture, from parents, or from old versions of themselves that no longer exist. And the result is constant resistance. The problem is not that they're lazy or that they lack discipline. The problem is misalignment. When your identity, your direction, and your actions are aligned, effort is still there, but it feels different. Aligned effort feels purposeful. It has momentum. It compounds. Misaligned effort feels like friction. It drains your energy. It constantly resets your progress. You start something, and then you stop. And then you start again. And then you stop again. And eventually, people begin to form a dangerous conclusion. They start believing that the problem is them. They say things like, I just don't have the discipline. I always lose motivation. I can't stay consistent. But if you look closely, something else is happening. Consistency is not failing. Alignment is. Because discipline works best when it is reinforcing an identity that you already believe. If you see yourself as someone who values health, exercise becomes easier to sustain. If you see yourself as someone who creates, then producing work becomes easier to maintain. But when the behavior conflicts with the identity you currently hold, every action feels forced. You have to fight yourself to maintain it. And that's why some people can grind endlessly in certain areas of their life, but struggle in others. It's not because they suddenly lost discipline, it's because alignment changes depending on the domain. A person might feel completely aligned with their work, but deeply misaligned in their relationships, or aligned with their health, but misaligned with their career. Alignment is not global, it is contextual. And wherever alignment is missing, force usually appears. This is why many systems built around motivation and discipline eventually fail. They're designed to push behavior forward without addressing the underlying alignment of the person operating the system. They treat friction as a weakness that needs to be overcome. But friction is information. It tells you where something in your internal system is not matching the direction that you're trying to move. Imagine trying to drive a car with the parking brake on. You can press the gas harder, you can increase the engine power, but friction remains. Eventually, you start assuming that the car is broken, when in reality, something simple is holding the entire system back. Many people are living their lives with the psychological equivalent of the parking brake on. They're pushing harder instead of asking a deeper question. What part of my life is out of alignment? Sometimes it's identity. You're trying to live a life that doesn't match the person that you believe you are. Sometimes it's direction. You're moving toward goals that don't actually matter to you anymore. Sometimes it's emotional coherence. Your internal emotional state conflicts with the outcomes that you're trying to create. And sometimes it's simply awareness. You haven't stopped long enough to notice that the path that you're forcing may not be the one that you actually want to walk. Alignment doesn't mean that life becomes effortless. It means the effort starts moving you somewhere meaningful. Effort without alignment creates exhaustion. Effort with alignment creates momentum. That distinction is subtle, but it changes everything, because once you recognize misalignment, the solution stops being more force, and instead the solution becomes adjustment. Sometimes that adjustment is small, a small shift in how you approach a habit, a shift in how you define success, a shift in how you see yourself. And other times the alignment is bigger, a change in career direction, or a change in environment, or a change in goals that you've been chasing. So these changes can feel uncomfortable, but they often remove the invisible friction that has been showing up, slowing everything down. This is why some people experience dramatic shifts in their lives that appear almost suddenly. From the outside, it looks like everything suddenly just clicked. But what actually happened was alignment. When identity, direction, emotion, and action finally move in the same direction, progress begins to compound. Things that once required enormous amount of work begin to move with far less resistance. The effort is still there, but it is no longer wasted. It becomes focus. This is one of the central ideas behind alignmentism. Life tends to move in the direction of alignment. And when we ignore misalignment, we often compensate with force. We try to push harder, work longer, stay more disciplined. But force is rarely what creates change. Alignment is. So if life currently feels like constant effort, if every step forward feels like pushing a heavy weight uphill, the question may no longer be, how do I try harder? The better question might be, what part of my life is out of alignment? Because when alignment improves, everything begins to work for you instead of against you. And life stops feeling like something that you're constantly forcing. It begins to feel like something that you're moving with.